I'm like, I'm gonna get her on the phone. So we're gonna talk. What's that? Oh, is that the bed? What is
How
that?
do I get this thing to focus again?
Is that a doghouse? What is that? What am I looking at?
Trying to get it to focus. There we go.
Wow, look at the size of that thing. Damn. What is
Is it a
it?
house?
It's a bed for Seneca.
It's a bed? That's a
Yeah,
bed.
I haven't put the slats that go on the bottom yet.
Oh, okay.
Because once I put it together, then I have to cut those to fit the actual bed. Because
What do you put on top of that thing? You put like a
Nothing.
nice looking curtain or something? Oh,
Nothing. It's just supposed to be like a house, right? So it's like for fun. And she can put like, she can drape blankets over it, or like for fun,
Yeah.
like a tent. She can put like LED light strips on it. And I'm gonna make I'm making a second one for Max. But you can see.
That's
I
cool.
don't know if you can see. If you look in the background, let's see if I can get to focus again. See in the
Mhm.
background, there's some wooden ones like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right in the wood on the ground or on that little table thing.
Yeah.
That's the other one. It's not sanded yet. It's not painted, obviously. And so it's in process.
wow. Because didn't you and Katie, I don't know if you still sleep like with Max or if he has his own bed.
Right
They're
now, I
not gonna
sleep.
sleep. They're not going to want to sleep with you anymore. You're going to want their own bed now.
That's why we're making it. Well, we're having the other kid coming. So it's like
Right.
not practically possible because
Mhm.
Katie has to be with the baby. So Seneca's going to have to sleep with us. But what we're doing now is sort of transitioning them into having their own room together with their own beds and so forth. Right. So,
Cool.
and they're excited about it. They're like, oh, cool, we get our own bed. So Seneca was like climbing all over that thing when I put it together.
Hmm.
And I bought like these rail mounts and I screwed them into the bed frame so that way it can be taken apart and put back together and stuff. But I just basically downloaded the plan, or Katie sent me a plan. I downloaded it and then I just like followed the plan and I learned how to
Downloaded it
whitewash wood.
From source? Just like
From
a straight
source,
down?
just like
Wow.
I was just like, I don't know
Dude,
how to make this bed.
imagine
It
you're
just
like one of these spiritual people that's like, I'm channeling from source. And it's like, okay, now go build a bed that your child can sleep in safely for the next 5
like
years.
source is telling me to read this plan. It's like so dumb. All that source ever does is talk through a person, and it just says that everybody like just love is the answer. I'm like, that's the most like chicken shit cop out fucking thing you could say.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's just love. It's like, what does that mean? Because like, what do you know everyone's looking for?
Feeling like they're not gonna,
Yeah,
not gonna be in danger.
because they
It's like,
never
oh,
got love.
right.
You know what I mean? Like real love, like all the things that they need. So they're searching for that. So it's so easy for a channeler to just be like, oh, love is the focus. Just focus. You're like, oh, good. I can just keep focusing on what I was doing. Perfect. It's all going to work out. That's what we should talk about today. Just get right into it.
Okay. I just figured out why we were having the technical issues last week because it was
What were we having technical issues?
just the recording kept stopping.
Oh, yeah. Why?
But it was recording to the wrong place. So I just changed it now. I don't know if that changes anything, but we'll see.
I don't think it will because it'll
Oh,
just
I
convert it
read
all
my-
in one. We'll see.
We'll see.
I think it'll
But-
put the file there and then,
Hey,
cool.
how's my mic? Is this better?
Oh, yeah, that is better.
oh, I thought
Okay,
we were
now
already
let me
recording.
restate this again. Everyone, source is trying to talk to you and tell you a bunch of lies. They're an author that's just trying to get your money. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
what-
So I saw an article because like Vianney was asking me, he was texting me asking for like books on the first 7 years and like why that's important. Right. So I like was just like, okay, I'll just randomly find some shit to send to him. So I like found an article. It was from, I don't remember what it was from, but it was from some kind of mainstream thing. And it was talking about damn, what was it? Here it is. The age, oh, it's Scholastic. That's the one that does remember when you were a kid and you get that little like magazine
Yeah.
in school and like you order books and shit?
Yeah. That was the shit.
I know. If you were excited about Scholastic getting the book things, that means your parents read to you.
Yeah, I was excited.
You
But
were
it's
not
talking about-
excited?
What was that?
You were excited or were not
I
excited?
was very excited for
Yeah.
the Scholastic shit. Like
Yeah.
every time I got that Scholastic thing, I got the magazine, I X'd off the books that I wanted. My mom would look through it and she'd be like, "You're gonna have to call this down a little bit because that's a lot of books. And I don't know if we can, fit that in our budget this year." And then like I'd go walking through because they would set up like a little pop-up in the library or something. And then I'd go walking through and it'd be like, "Oh, but I want this book and I want that one and this one." Is always a great time whenever Scholastic came in town.
You know how there's like supposed to be a limit when you go to the library of how many books you can check out,
Yeah.
right? When our kids go to the library, they come back with, like those like Whole Foods bags that, like the like full, like
Jeez.
full of books, right? And Katie's always going back to them like, "Yeah, I don't know if we have this one anymore." She's like having to like pay for books and like pay all these late fines because like we keep them for too long and everything.
That's hilarious.
But it's actually pretty cool. It's like having a
Funding the
bookstore where
library.
you could just like switch them out. I mean, it's like, wow, libraries are actually pretty cool, especially for kids' books and stuff. Like I personally would not want to get books from the library like as an adult. I just want to keep the book.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd rather just order it. Even if I don't like it, I'll stick it on the shelf or something. Who cares? But like, I don't usually find books I don't like. There's always something of value in the book, generally speaking, because I wouldn't have got it in the first place if there wasn't something in it. But so anyways, I was looking at this article from Scholastic, and it's pretty cool, actually. It says a milestone developmental stage, the age of reason. You can expect your child to experience a big leap forward in common sense and maturity around age 7. And it says around the age of 7, give or take a year, children enter a developmental phase known as the age of reason. The age of reason refers to the developmental cognitive, emotional, and moral stage in which children become more capable of rational thought, have internalized a conscience, and have better capacity to control impulses than in previous stages. Some PhD psychotherapist. It's the time when a child starts to truly grasp the difference between right and wrong and begins to realize that other people have their own feelings that might not match his or hers. It has to do with neurological growth, temporal and frontal lobes, blah, 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 processed, increased ability to process emotion. But there was this really interesting point, separating fantasy from reality. One way to figure out if your child has reached this age of development is keep an ear open for any suspicious questions about fairies, Santa Claus, or the monster his older brother swears is living in the basement. When your child's imagination can still roam free, his belief in make-believe may start to fade. Oh, it said while your child's imagination can still roam free, his belief in make-believe still may start to fade. Despite their wish to maintain childhood wonder, latency age 7 or 8-year-old kids are increasingly able to problem solve, identify patterns, and apply logic to questions. Thus, their beliefs in imaginary characters like Santa and monsters diminishes during this time.
Whoa.
There was this really interesting point where it was like, it's like, yes, I know you want to keep your kid, in that stage, but I'm sure I'm not the only mom who gets a little weepy at the idea of her littles starting to ask questions about Santa Claus. But there's a bright side to the little adult your child is becoming. They've developed an internalized sense of right and wrong and are not as reliant on external forces to guide them. These newfound skills make it easier for kids to compromise on their own, meaning less tug of war with toys, being able to say I'm sorry and actually mean it. Dude, I'm telling you right now, Max is already well into that stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Well
that
into
sounds
that
like
stage. Like,
yeah, where he
like
can
the other
control
day,
himself.
like something happened, like he dropped something on the floor and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, Cam." And like we never tell our kids to apologize. Like there's rare cases where like if they were to like do something like that was even inadvertently like harmful to like if they hit the other kid, an accident, whatever, like Seneca starts crying or something, it's like, "Hey Max, I would suggest to go over and talk to her and let her understand that you didn't do it on purpose and just apologize to her." Like, but it's not like you need to say you're sorry, not like that kind of a thing. But it's very rare anyways. Even that is very rare. It's like very specific situations.
When you guys were in Orlando, there was a moment where like Seneca had this bracelet and she pulled it a little bit too much and it came apart. And Max came over and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "Why are you apologizing?" And he says, "Because I gave it to her." And I was like, "Oh, okay." That makes sense. Yeah. So like he could see even like his responsibility within something that she had done because he played a role in it, So yeah.
Do you know that Magic School Bus? Do y'all remember that?
I remember that.
Right. So
Mhm.
Max got one of the Magic School Buses books from the library. Like, generally speaking, we just let them pick out whatever children's books they want. Like, if it's very specific, like, impulsing something that's really not best, like, we'll obviously direct them within it. But generally speaking, they can pick out books, and we look at them and stuff and see what they are. But he got Magic School Bus books, and and he was like kind of asking me like, is it okay? And I was like, it's fine. Like, I'm not worried about you. Because I was talking to him, I was like, do you know why they have these books? And he's like, why? And I'm like, it's impulsing kids to like school, just trying to do that. And I was like, but what's interesting is they make it like way more fun than actual school actually is. Like, there's none of this stuff happens at school. And he was like, well, is it okay if I read it? I'm like, yeah, I'm not worried about you being impulse. Like, you already understand what school is, and it's not a concern. So it's not going to work on you is what I'm saying. I'm just telling you why these are designed generally because of kids who are going to school. It's more like a buyer's remorse type thing, right? Anyway, so he's been, anytime he gets interested in something, he'll want to like become that and like kind of role play it a lot. Right. Like when we started reading Chronicles of Narnia, he was always putting on like robes and things like that and pretending to be Queen Jadis, who's like one of the main evil characters in the book or whatever. Like throughout raising him, like he's always done that. So is Seneca, right? And so now we're like, we have this gigantic pile of dirt in our backyard because I got it delivered to use around the property. So the kids love to go up and climb it, and it's like super compacted down, so it's like you can actually climb up it and everything. And they call it Dirt Mountain. And so we have a ATV, right? Like a 4-wheeler, and the kids love for me to drive them around on them, right? So Seneca will sit in front, he'll sit behind me, he'll hold on to me, and I'll hold on to Seneca. And we go slow, so it's not a big deal or whatever. But we'll ride around the trails slowly and around the property and stuff. And we obviously have the UTV as well, which is like, side by side. And he's very interested in the shifting lever. Like, he's always asking me like, because he picks up on things that we emphasize. Like when we got the UTV, I was explaining to Katie, I was like, the guy who sold it to us, I was like, he suggested keep it in low gear, generally speaking. Unless you're just going to be like driving fast, cruising around, like keep it in low gear for general stuff around the house. When we got the ATV, the guy said the opposite for the ATV. He was like, generally keep it in high gear unless you're going to pull something on a trailer or whatever, keep it in high gear if you're just cruising around. Because that's what you're going to do on the ATV, right? So I was explaining that. And so Max is like listening to this. So he's like, when I'm shifting, he's like, Cameron, remember to put it in high gear. Or he'll be like, can we put it in low gear now? Like, I just really want to see what it's like in low gear, right? And he'll be like, why does this one have high and low, but on your truck, it just says D and L? Why does it have drive and low? Why doesn't it have high? Like, he's like figuring out all the differences between like the different cars. And like, we got a golf cart yesterday to drive around town. They bring golf carts in our town. And it only had forward, neutral, reverse. And he was like, why does this one not have a low gear? Right. And when he found out about neutral, he kept asking me like, why does it have neutral? What's the purpose of neutral? And I was explaining to him, the engine can be on, but it's not engaged. So it won't go forward or backward based on the engine. So he's always asking me like, why is there neutral on this one? Why does it have a neutral? So I'm just giving you context for the next part. So now he's got this Magic School Bus story. He's reading all that stuff. And like, he told me the other day, he goes, he's like, I'm Miss Frizzle, but sometimes they call me the Frizz. And I'm like, how do you know that? And he goes, that's what it said in the book. Right. And he's like telling me all this stuff, and he's never seen the TV show. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Like, he got it all from reading the book. Like, he knows all the things. I'm like, I remember that as a kid from the TV show, and he knows all of it from reading it. Right. So he's like, tell me all, and he's like, so he's on Dirt Mountain, and he'll be like, Cameron, he'll like come and find me and be like, Cameron, come play Magic School Bus with me. So the Dirt Mountain is his Magic School Bus. Okay. And he has all of these, like, he's taken hammers and stuff from my shop, and he's like stuck them into the ground, and like sticks that he sticks into the dirt. And those are his shift levers. So I'll be like, where do you want to go? And I'll tell him. And then he'll be like, okay, I got to put it in drive. Okay. And then over here, we got to push that down because that's this. And I got to do that. And he's like, got this whole system that's he's consistent with of like how he makes it go. And he goes, this one, he said, what's interesting about this, Cameron, is that it drives when it's in neutral. Isn't that weird? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's only possible because it's magic, because it's not real, right? But this one drives in neutral. So he's like, I gotta put it in neutral. Okay, now we're going somewhere, right? So he'll tell me where we're going or whatever, right? So it's just like, again, for those who don't know or know, just to emphasize, like he'll be 5 at the end of October. So basically 2 months from now, he's still not even 5 years old, right? And the way he like thinks about things. So he knows it's not real. We didn't have to lie to him. Like he knows, like he says, magic's not real. And it's funny because people, do you ever hear this point with parents where they're like, we tell them like, oh, don't lie to your kids about Santa Claus. And they're like, well, I don't want to take away the magic of childhood.
Right.
And it's like, but magic's not real. What are you taking away? You're taking away something that's not real.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that article,
they're still thinking magic's real at like a subconscious.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're still thinking there's some real element to it. But in that article, it says that it's that age where they start to develop like a sense of right and wrong, common sense, and so forth, right? There was this one phrase in there. It said, where is it? Hold on one second. There was this, it said, hold on one second. There was a very specific phrase. I forget where it was, but it's like their sense of right and wrong. No, hold on. Let's see if I can find it. If I can find what it was, I'll come back to it. But it's like there was this point where it was like something starts to develop. But look at this. They're increasingly able to problem solve, identify patterns, apply logic to questions. In other words, at 7 years, this ability, like cognitive ability, the structure starts to develop to be able to do certain things. But it's like, okay, if you're building a bed, like I was building that bed, right? When you get to a certain point in the process, like where it's at now, after I put the slats in, then I can put the mattress in, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's like, see, naturally, beds can just hold mattresses. It's like, okay, when they're at that specific stage of its development process, yes, you can put a mattress in it. But is that natural? Is that bed gonna stay together?
No.
How do you know? Right? Like, depends if it's put together properly. What if you didn't put the screws in properly?
Yeah.
What happens when you put that mattress in? What if you didn't get it all square and stuff? It's going to be like all creaky and start to fall apart and so forth, right? It's only going to be able to handle so much weight. And depending on how you build that bed to that point determines, what about when the kids are jumping on it?
Right.
Is it going to be able to handle that? Right? So it's like this article, the tone of it is kind of like, this is just when they start to develop logic ability, like as if it's just a natural thing. It's natural because there's a progression. We have DNA, it unfolds in a certain sequence. But depending on what you put in the beginning determines what kind of problem solving ability they'll have, what kind of common sense, what kind of sense of right and wrong. You see what I'm saying? What kind of maturity that they'll have. So parents can fall into this trap of like, it's just a natural part. They're going to get to that point and then it's fine. I don't need to do anything. But it's most important time is before that ability develops. Because once the ability develops once the part of being able to problem solve comes online, guess what? You can't influence what data set the child is going to draw from anymore.
Mm.
In other words, once I put the mattress on the bed, once it's at that point, or when I'm about to put it, I can't anymore affect the structural integrity of that bed.
Right.
I should have done that well before. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how is your child going to solve problems if they don't understand 2 + 2 is 4? or if they don't understand logic, dude. Oh, you guys, oh man, I got to get a video because you know Max is like making his own videos, right? You saw
Yeah,
that
yeah,
on the
yeah.
parenting group.
I saw that.
Okay, check this out. So last night we're laying in bed. It was probably like 9:30, 10-ish, something like that. And I was reading my book and he wants to talk to me, right? So he's like asking me about math questions. He loves to ask about math questions right before he falls asleep. So we're laying in bed and he's like asking me some stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, let me take a break from reading. Let me just talk to him a little bit, right? So, because I could see he really wants to talk about it. So he's like asking me, you know, what's this plus that? And we're talking about it. And I go, hey, okay. I go, Max, because he asked me like, what's 9 plus 6 or something, right? And I was like, you want to see something really cool? I said, check this out. If I want to do 9 plus a number, like a 2-digit number, or even like a single digit number, I was like, 9 plus 16. I was like, if you take away 1 from the 6, you get what? He's like 5, right? And then I said, and you add that, if you add 1 to the 1 from the 15, or was it 16? If you add 1 to the 1, you get what? He's like 26 or 25, right? And I was like, so 9 plus 16 is 25. I was like, you just take away 1 from the first digit, and then you add 1 to the other one. And that's how, and it makes sense, right? Because you're adding 10 and then you're taking 1 away, right? So it's another way of thinking about it. Like if you want to do, actually, I should tell him that because that's even more simple. Like if you want to do 9 plus 16, just do 26 minus 1, right? It's like you can easily come up with that, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, when I told him that, and actually, so I should have told him that easier way, but actually I told him a more slightly complicated way, which actually is probably better because then he has to really consider it, right? And actually put all that information together. So for the purpose of him learning how to like deal with information in his head, like imagine this is in the dark, no writing anything down, no fingers, nothing, right? This is my 4-year-old, 4.5, almost 5, right? And I'm like, okay, so does that make sense, right? So I'm like, so I'll pretend like you're Max, Mitch, okay? So I'm like, all right, does it make sense? Like 9 plus 15, you go down 1, 4, and then you go 24. Easy, right? So then I ask him, so what's 9 plus 37? And he like goes, and it's like my book light is on, so I can still see his face, but it's not like it's light, you know. And he's like, what did I say? 9 plus 37.
Plus 37.
37, right? 9 plus 37. He was like, okay, so 6, 36. Wait, no, 46. 46? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Okay, how about 9 plus 43? And he's like, 2, 42, 32. No, wait, no, 52. 52. I'm like, yeah. And then I'm just like giving him one after the other. And he's like, because he's makes the mistake of going down on both. You see what I mean? And then he's like, no, wait, I have to go the other way on that one. Okay, cool. So when I get home today, I'm going to be like, hey, guess what I realized? You could just add 10 and take away 1. And that'll make it even better for him. He'll be like, oh, yeah. So I'm like, now he's like sitting there and adding. Oh, and then I go, okay, you want to see another really cool one? What about multiplication? All right. I was like, when you do a 2-digit number times, or sorry, a single digit number times 9, you always, the sum of the digits always add up to 9. And I was like, so for example, 9 times 5, if you take away 1 from 5, you get 4, right? Which is 40. And then you just have to think about what plus 4 equals 9. And he goes, what plus 4 equals 9? 5, right? I'm like, okay, so 45. And he's like, oh. So then we start doing the multiplication ones. It's like a trick, right? It's like an algorithm, right?
Yeah.
So he's doing that, right? And then when I told him that 9 plus 9 is 18, 9 times 9 is 81, which is a reverse, he was like, that's amazing, right? So this is we're already in the age of reason.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he hasn't lost any of the magic because he's super excited about the fact that what's 9 plus 7? Like he's constantly all day asking us math questions and like looking at things going, oh, there's 3 of those, but what if I took away 1 or whatever, right? He's constantly, and then what did he say last night? I was talking about 10, he asked me something about 10 plus -2. And I go, well, that'd be 8. And he goes, oh, he goes, because the -2, it just gets you back to 0. But then you still have to go past that. And he's like reasoning out to himself how the negative number, and I was explaining to him 10 plus -2 is really just the same as 10 minus 2. He's like, oh. So his reasoning ability is off the charts for his age because we've built in all the vocabulary, very specifically, obviously, the technotutor from a young age. So is that why he's entering the age of reason sooner? Perhaps. Well, it's not perhaps, it is why, but I just meant it as a hypothetical, right? But I'm not even trying to emphasize the fact that he's doing it at a young age. That's not the point here. The fact is his ability to reason at this stage is so high because we've built the foundation properly. Does that make sense? He can handle more. He can sit there and do all of that in his head.
Yeah.
So he's using his imagination. You see what I mean? Like, well, I want my child to develop their imagination, so I have to tell them about fairies and Santa Claus. I'm like, but that's not helping them later. That's just using your imagination. You have an imagination. You don't need to develop an imagination. You have one. That's going to unfold. It's just what content you put in is going to determine how that imagination becomes used and how it develops further. Does that make sense?
That's such a key point. I just want to put this so it's blatantly obvious for people listening, is like in those first 7 years of our lives, really the first 3 and 4, is like you get programmed by everything in your environment as well as your parents' genetics. And that's what gets in there. And based on what gets in there, that's what then starts to unfold between, around age 7 for the mainstream child. And once you get to that age, you can't get back in there unless you have technotutor. That's literally the point of technotutor, getting back at that foundation of that brick wall, as we call it. But that is just so amazing. Like, I'm very much looking forward to having kids and setting up a similar environment where they have that free range of, you have a dirt mountain and then you have a wood shop and you have, animals and stuff. It's like, they are going to be so effective in the world. We're literally creating a new world. What were you going to say?
Before we get too far from it, that point of like parents trying to develop an imagination, the reason why they do that is because they can see, after a certain age, people lack imagination. And but they don't realize the reason why is because you put your kids in school, right? And then you force them to TV, yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah, every influence that you put on them. And so like you haven't helped them to develop a solid ability to reason.
It's like, yes, also, okay, so the reasoning part comes from constantly going back to making reasonable decisions.
How do you define reasonable and reason here? Because I'm reading Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes.
Oh yeah.
And he's explaining that reason is really just the ability to add things and subtract things. And I had never even really considered it like that. But if you look at the root of reason, I remember looking this up a little while ago. It's like the actual root word in reason. I think it's something like reg, which is like to measure.
Like reason and reckoning, reasoning, measurement, these are all the same basic concepts. And that's why Bernard says 1 + 1.
Yeah, it's
common
to put
sense
together.
is 1 + 1. He's trying to say it's just you add the next part to the next part because they fit together. So it's like if you're building a bed, it's actually just common sense how to build a bed. Now, you may not know all the details, but that's because you don't have the vocabulary. When you have the vocabulary, you apply common sense. Like, okay, if I put it at this angle, it will be stronger. How do I know that? Because I have the vocabulary of how shear forces work or stress or whatever it is. Like if you have all that understanding, then it becomes common sense how to apply it. But you have to be honest with it. If you're like, but I don't like right angles. I think right angles are bad. I want to do it like this. Well, then you're not going with the common sense instead of adjusting your preference. So this is what I was trying to get to is the reasoning part is very obvious and simple when you have the correct data. Like, think about Tesla and how they have those self-driving cars and like millions and millions and millions of miles driven, where they get all that information, they're feeding it into the algorithms to learn from it. It's information. They're trying to gather information about how the world works. It's trying to give vocabulary to those AI systems. And that your child's intellect is an AI system. It is an artificial intelligence. And you're giving it data in the first 7 years. Anytime you are spiteful or you manipulate someone emotionally in the presence of your child for some kind of energetic gain, you're teaching that AI, that's how you behave. You're teaching them how to reason. So their reasoning process becomes corrupted because it's based on a personal self-interest point rather than a common sense, like direct understanding of how things work. And I want to add this. I want you to share that point. I want to add this real quick. Just check this out. This is the kind of bullshit that you get. So you read this article that I told you guys about, right? And I posted it in the distributor page. How to help kids navigate this new phase. So I just went to the bottom. Some children will take their new reasoning skills in stride. Others may struggle more as they realize that situations that used to seem simple now have more nuance to them. Open communication is always key to helping out kids process these tricky emotions. If you're having trouble getting the conversation started because you're a fucking retard, trying using a kid-centered show or book as a jumping off point. Social stories or stories with characters have similar experiences or characteristics of a child can be very helpful during transition. This person did not edit this. These social stories can provide an excellent starting point. This is a psychology PhD at Johns Hopkins. These social stories can provide an excellent starting point for parents to discuss these situations, make parallels as to how this impacts the child's life, and point out options for how to react to experiences. Here you go. Ready? You guys ready for this? If your child is struggling with a sibling, what do you think I would do if there was conflict between Max and Seneca?
Talk to them both.
How?
You'd explain, well, ask them, what do they see is going on? You'd explain the consequence. You'd help them talk to each other and find common ground.
And give them the
That's actually
vocabulary
best.
to actually understand it.
Yeah. You do your techno tutor on those words.
This is what they say. If your child is struggling with a sibling, try snuggling up for a screening of Frozen to get her to open up about her troubles.
What? Well, how is that even
Oh.
related?
If it's a parent and child issue, maybe the relatable themes of Moana will get them chatting.
What?
Oh, like they think that this theme in the movie is going to help them. Oh,
Now,
wait, hang on. They're an expert though. They're from Johns Hopkins. I thought I was supposed to trust the experts.
like,
The
I
science.
haven't seen Frozen, but I hear people talk about it a lot. There's probably a lot of really spiteful, fucked up, like immature bullshit in that movie.
I'm sure.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's a Disney show. It's a Disney movie. Like, come on, right? And like, what are they impulsing kids with? So that's what your kids are learning. They're not gonna fucking open up to you. Why would you have trouble getting your kids to open up to you?
Because you're a shitty parent.
They don't trust you.
Mhm.
They know you're fucking lying because you're telling them to be reasonable and you're not reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people might think Max is growing up so fast. Like, why would you do that to him? But like, you know what? Anytime I'm walking next to him, he holds my hand. Not because he's scared. It's like he wants to walk with me. Like, if I held out my hand, he'll take it and we'll walk, but he doesn't feel like he needs to hold it.
Yeah.
So he's still a child. He hasn't lost any of that. In fact, he's still got the innocence that everyone wants in the magic. Like, last night it must have been about 20 minutes at least. They were like, they would stand up on the bed. We have a big king size bed in one of the rooms, right? They would stand up and then like flop down on their butt and their back. And they would kept going like, I just have to, and they would jump and go bounce. And then like, they would fall on their back. And then Seneca started doing it. And she was like, I just have to bounce. And she kept doing it, right? And Max would be like, I just have to. And he would jump in the air and go, bounce. And he kept like saying it all weird in different ways. And he's like, see, when I jump and fall down, it makes me say it weird. You know what I mean? Like it was like, they just kept doing it over and over and over, right? So, I mean, like there's still tons of magic and fun and all that stuff. And there's no drama. Like we're not like having to get up and no, get your fucking pants on. We're going to be late for school or all this bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like parents are like trying to hold on to this magic over here, while over here it's like all fucking like insane, boring, mundane stuff.
Right.
And it's so easy to do. It's so basic. It's like develop your children's vocabulary and let go of all your bullshit. Like if you watch Frozen and you think that's a good idea for kids to watch, there's something wrong with your brain.
Mhm.
And it just shows you like these PhD people, look at their kids. Their kids are just fucking normal kids. They don't have kids like ours. All these PhD, child psychologists, neuro, whatever. Like next time you go to a marriage counselor, ask them how their relationships are. Ask them to sit and watch them interact. Ask them to go to dinner with their spouse and interact and watch how they interact. And ask yourself, is that who I want to fucking listen to? If you're going to go to a child psychologist, ask them to see their kids. If you're going to go to a teacher, ask them to teach you something. You see what I mean? Like people don't do that. They're just like, oh, you're an authority. Okay, yeah, cool. You know what you're doing. I don't know. It's because people are so, and see, this is my point. How many adults can actually reason effectively, really, beyond their just normal job? If they
Very,
could, they'd
very,
all
very
be
few.
rich. If they could, they'd all be rich.
Mhm.
Because read The Intelligent Investor. Like, what does it take to fucking get rich? It takes applying reason. Because what is it? Adding, subtracting. How do you build a business? You add another client.
Mhm.
Like, it's so fucking obvious. You build relationships, you network, you add people to your network. But people can't do that. They can't communicate, and they're just like, I just need someone to give me a paycheck. I'll go through a system, I'll get the certification, just give me a job. So then you have parents like who have to look up an article like this to figure out, how do I get my kid to open up to me? They're starting to question Santa Claus. Something's wrong. Like, what? The fact that they didn't question it was a problem. But kids won't question it in the early stages because they don't know any better, because they haven't been taught that it's bullshit.
Mhm.
And if a parent wants to sit here and be like, well, I don't see any problem with telling kids that. Okay, then also tell them that they're going to go to hell if they disobey you. Tell them that too. Tell them fucking aliens live under the crust of the earth and they're going to eat them if they fucking don't wear shoes. Just fucking lie to them about everything. And then
Well, I
be
only
upset.
lie to them about Christmas because I want that day to be special, Cameron. I wanna
Right,
just
make
feel
every day
that
special.
Yeah.
See, but this goes back to everything we talk about every time we do this podcast, going back to looking for a feeling and making
Mhm.
decisions based on that rather than actually what is best. That's not reasonable. What were you going to share about that point about reasoning? Because I was very intrigued about your thing about Hobbes and all that.
Oh, just that I mean, we hear this all the time, like the age of reason and be reasonable and reason it out. But what does that actually mean? Because that's like a missing brick for a lot of people, a crumbled brick, myself included, until I got TechnoTutor. And just the way that he broke it down, I mean, I just started this part. It's actually really fascinating. The whole book, he starts it with, it's almost like a manual of sorts. It's almost kind of like a DIP before DIP was a thing. Don't get it twisted. It's definitely not DIP. For anyone who was like, oh, I'll just do that because it's easy.
But that's what these guys were trying to do, is create these manuals for living.
Yes. And the first part is on sense. So he's explaining like, what is sense? Like, wow, this could be really valuable. Like, I wish as a young kid, I was reading this. Like, that would be awesome. Because Max, I'm sure you could sit down. I mean, it's written in like old English, so it's weird spelling, weird from our perspective. Like, only is like ONELY. It's like only. That's like onely. It's like one. Wow, that's where only comes from. That's fascinating. So I'm learning from that. Thank goodness I have TechnoTutor. I would not even pick up this book if I didn't have it. And now my life is better because of it. But he talks about sense, and then he gets into imagination. It was fascinating because I was reading imagination while we were at the Jin event. which is also about imagination. And just seeing how he also saw that imagination is a result of what's been like previously learned, and how you can use your imagination and use it to like construct things within your mind that can then help you navigate the world. She's like, wow, I wish someone taught me that with imagination as well. Because
See,
for me,
that's
imagination,
what we explain to our kids.
yeah, for me, imagination was like the Disney movie in like Disney World. It was like, oh, just imagine whatever.
See, I explained to Max, you have an imagination. You can think about things in your head, but use it in order to figure out and plan things out, but then realize it may not work the way you're thinking, because you can think about things that don't exist. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible. Like, because we were talking about, I think we were talking about the magic school bus thing or something like that. And I'm like, see, because it's in a book, you can make it up, but that doesn't mean it's real, because you can make things up that aren't real, because it doesn't, the rules of physicality don't apply in the realm of imagination. So you have to be careful about it. So that's what we're teaching him about, his imagination, rather than abusing it, filling it up with a bunch of stuff that's not actually physically real. Because the problem is, again, this is the problem. It doesn't suddenly just naturally, the child becomes able to reason effectively at 7 years old. These structures to be able to reason are there. But what you put into it in the first 7 years determines if it will be reasonable. You could say, but everybody learns how to reason, then they would all be rich. Because they would look around and go, it's fucking easy to make money. You just apply da 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 da. But instead they go get fucking jobs. Because they don't know how to apply reason. Because they only go with their emotions. They're not reasonable, because you filled up their imagination with a bunch of emotional shit. So now, in the course of them trying to imagine and reason something, there's all this emotion that comes into it, and they make unreasonable decisions, even though they're following the logic that was programmed into them. But if you program incorrect logic into a child, they will follow the incorrect logic. They will draw conclusions that are not correct, but they're following the logic. It's like if you start with assumptions that don't make sense, but then follow the logic of them, you can create a system that doesn't produce an effective result. It'll produce a result that's ineffective.
I'm just seeing it so obviously now. As a child, I was at effect of like everything. Well, like any child is initially, but then I was never programmed with that reason. And so my whole point of my imagination, like one of my first memories I have was when I was in first grade. I remember my parents took me and my brother to Disney World, and I would spend the whole trip. So like we saw this Indiana Jones battle thing, and he's like, maybe I'd seen the movie Indiana Jones beforehand. I probably did. And I was obsessed with this idea of there being like one hero and him fighting all these ninjas. And so then I would draw, and there's like pictures of me, my parents took it, where I was throughout the whole trip walking around with a pad of paper and drawing these battle scenes of like this Indiana Jones looking figure killing these ninjas. And then it was like a whole notebook full of this shit, like stacks. And I just remember, and that was also because I watched like Power Rangers and Superman and stuff when I was a kid. And then because I realized this when I first got really, like when I started DIP Pro, really looking at my root memories, I was like, wow, this inner idea of this battle of like there's a hero and then a villain, the good Power Rangers versus the evil guy that's trying to take over the city, or Indiana Jones versus the other guy. And it's like this inner conflict. And that was like the whole purpose of my whole imagination, was I was always envisioning this like battle scene. And this is when I'm like in first and second grade. And it was like the most fun thing to me to imagine this, because I guess I knew it wasn't real. I didn't grow up in an environment where there was like real violence. So it became this fun thing to me to try and emulate what was on the TV screen. But that was just creating this major, many, many characters. But the main thing was like inner conflict of energy. And then I was creating like characters within myself and then the other. And man, and that just totally fueled everything. And then all my childhood friends, we'd play with GI Joes, or then we got into airsoft guns and paintball, and it was like this whole idea of just battling each other, when in reality it's like, wow, that's such a fucking waste of my life, years of my life, for this idea of a battle. And it's like, it's not to say that the idea of like wrestling, for example, could be cool, jiu-jitsu, like as a art in a way of like expressing yourself physically, cool, there could be something to it. Like my parents put me in karate, but my whole starting point is like, I love the energy of that battle, and you don't know who's going to win, and then one of them has to win, and then the next battle starts. And it was like years, probably a decade of my life, that just running out complete, more than that, because then you get into high school and then the game Call of Duty and Halo comes out, and I'm like obsessed with it, to the point where I'm like, I know I have a problem, but I don't know what to do about it. I just want to play Call of Duty.
See, all that stuff gets directed into, so you just are focusing on entertaining yourself
Yeah.
because you just want to keep living out that fantasy. And that's not how real life is. Real life isn't like that.
Yeah.
Real life is mundane.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's moment to moment. So you need these things that are like, so they have to take a year to create a 20-minute episode or whatever, I'm exaggerating, but whatever it is, so that you can watch and live out that fantasy.
Mhm.
But you're just entertaining yourself. What's the value in it? Just so you'll pay money for something, so someone else can have
Yeah.
that actual lifestyle that you would really like.
Mhm.
That's all it is. So the point is, your imagination was captured when you were very young.
Yeah.
And that's what parents are doing. I'll give you an example. I want to show you a picture real quick. Okay. This will be a good one for everybody. What do you
Yeah.
think she's doing right now?
She's looking at something.
Right. I saw her looking at doing that, and I took a picture, and I was like, and there was a TV on behind us in the restaurant.
Huh.
And I like looked at it, and it was like some old Western movie, and like they were like shooting guns, and this guy was like dunking some woman's head in some like a bucket of water.
Oh,
And I was like, hey, Seneca, I was like, what are you seeing there? And she was like, something on that TV. And I was like, what are they doing? Are those people like fighting? What are they doing? Why is that man? Did you see her been putting her head in the water? Why do you think he's doing that? I started asking her questions, right? To get her to start processing, like, what are you seeing there? Right. And then I was like, hey, why don't you come switch places with me, so I can sit over there? And she was like, why? And I was like, because that TV is impulsing you with some things that are not best, that you're not really understanding right now. It would be better for you to sit over on this side where there's no TVs. And she was like, why? And she kept asking me, so I kept explaining to her. And Katie was like, Seneca, why don't you and me, do you want to go to the bathroom? She's like, yeah. She's like, why don't you go to the bathroom? Why don't we go to the bathroom together? And I said, yeah. I said, when you come back, I'm going to sit here and you can sit over there. Okay. You agree? She's like, that's fine. She said, yeah, I agree. So when they came back, she sat on that side. And it was funny because Max had been sitting next to her. He wasn't interested in TV.
hmm.
You know why? He even said to me, he was like, yeah, I see those TVs, but I'm not watching them. There was a that little peg game, that with the triangles and the golf tees.
Yeah.
There was one of those on the table, and it had instructions on it. He read them all, and then he started putting it together and started playing the game. Like, he figured out how to play it without us explaining it to him.
That's cool.
Wow.
So he was like the whole time interested in that, like trying to get, the right amount of points or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like a real physical thing. I mean, it's a
right.
game,
He can read, so
yeah.
he was able to like figure it out and everything. He was more focused on that. The Seneca was just drinking her milk or whatever, and then that TV was there.
Yeah.
But you see, that's what I do. I don't just go like, oh well, because I didn't even notice it when we came in.
Yeah.
They were like kind of behind the bar, like up high or whatever. But when I saw that, then I realized what was going on. I'm like, oh wait, something's got her attention, right? Yeah. So then I tried to help contextualize it and then change the environment, change the situation. Right? And fortunately, there was no noise, or there was no sound coming from the TVs, right? But it's like, imagine you're a child and you're just seeing these images. And now she's being programmed with like these people gunfighting and like fighting each other and stuff. Like, and does she even understand what's going on, right? And so, would I go back in time and like prevent that? Absolutely. But it just shows you like how That's a restaurant where they know children are going to be in there. Why would they have that on the TV? And it wasn't like blood or anything. It wasn't like Terminator. It was just some old Western movie. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying it wasn't like extreme. But even that level, I'm like, no, not acceptable.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did what I could do in that moment, right? And Katie wasn't like, well, what's the big deal? Like she like was like, oh yeah, like she immediately went into like supporting the point to like change the environment, right? So that's how specific we are. So when people eventually become jealous later because they're fucking losers and they didn't want to do what we said, and they see that our kids are running things in this world, they're going to know why, because we spelled it out. And I told you, because in that moment, I changed the environment so that that wasn't influencing my daughter. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how specific you have to be. We don't have TVs in our home. They don't use iPads. If they're using the phone, it's very specific and it's for a brief moment. Generally speaking, like the only time we ever watch any kind of like YouTube videos, stuff like that, where it's like cartoony type stuff, there's very specific ones. And it's only when we're on long car trips where it's like, otherwise the kids would basically have to sit there and do, but now Max can read books. So we're developing all that stuff and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So we're just very, 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 very specific. And you can see the difference. So we just don't make excuses. It's the same thing with anything in your life. Like it's cool that Mitch brought up that point about reason, because I was looking it up on Google to see what it says. And you know how like it gives you like the origin of it?
Yeah.
It goes back to the word ratio. It actually goes further than that. But it goes back to the word ratio and then to the word for the Latin word for the word consider.
Yeah.
But ratio is pretty interesting because it's like reasoning is just a process of weighing information and kind of going where the logic takes you. And there was this one, if you look at in Google, the first definition, but like the second sort of subset of that is a good or obvious cause to do something. I like that word obvious. It's like obvious. That's why I'm always saying that. I'm always like,
Yeah.
well, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Because I'm just following the logic based on understanding what the words mean. I'm not imposing how I want it to fucking be. So it's like, why did I in that moment not allow Seneca to watch that show? It's fucking obvious because I know what it's doing, what the consequence is. So I'm not like, well, but I really wanted to sit on this side of the table. Nah, it's not a big deal. So I rationalize it. Nah, it's okay. Like, why don't I let them watch Disney shows? It's fucking obvious.
Right.
You know what the consequence, you know what I mean? Like, but the magic into this, and no, that's all your shit that you're imposing. You're not following the logic.
But then how are they supposed to relate to other kids? And, how are they supposed to socialize?
Yeah, exactly.
And,
That's like, how do you relate to retards?
Yeah.
Well, now
I'm
it's
not interested
it's
in
cool. Yeah, because we have this whole group of kids now that are on this next wave. It's like, guess what? Your kids, either you want them to relate to the mainstream kid that believes in magic and can't reason and just
and
go
believes in
along with
masks,
everything.
by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Or your kid's going to relate to these kids. Which one do you want?
This is the time where their ability to reason, so 7 years old, where their ability for right and wrong reasoning is coming online. And what age do you put your kids in school?
Yeah, 7.
Well, actually, right before that, right?
Yeah. 6.
5 and 6, right?
Yeah.
And now they're programming kids with wearing the masks, and it's all about doing that and so forth. So just think about it. Why do they put kids in school at that age? Because if you're with your parents during that time, what are you going to learn?
That you don't need to do that stuff.
Right. Like whatever your parents' definitions of right and wrong are.
Yeah.
And they say that this is the point when the children start to be a little bit less reliant anyways on external authority. So they're taking them away from their parents and they're putting them in a system where there's no obvious authority. Like the teacher plays an authority role, but it's not obvious that she's the authority. Because she's not the authority. Who's the authority? Who do they want the authority to be? If you put your kid in a government school, who do you think
The government.
they're going to see as the authority? Yes. And you might say, oh, but you know, like if you're in private school, it's much better. But private schools are run on the exact same model
Yeah.
as public school. Oh, well, I go to Waldorf school. Okay. But you still didn't direct the first 7 years effectively. So they're just going to be around a bunch of other people who are kind of emotionally unstable. You're not directing that part. The problem is the person waited and they're like, well, I'll put them in this amazing creative type school or whatever. And it's like, you're just doing that because you don't want to take self-responsibility for doing it yourself. It's like getting married and then on your honeymoon, you have someone come in and fuck your wife.
Yeah.
You want someone else to take the responsibility. And you get, like, imagine you get married and then someone else comes and fucks your wife. And then every day for dinner, someone else comes and eats your dinner. And someone else comes and kisses your wife goodnight. And someone else comes and tucks your kids into bed. That's what you're doing. Because you have to go to a job. Why? Because you want security. Like, what man wants security?
The one who doesn't feel secure.
Yeah, it's not a man. Imagine like cavemen. And the wife's like, oh, we don't have any food. Can you go like hunt the antelope? And he's like, well, I don't know. It's like not really safe. She'd be like, I'm gonna fuck Thargor tonight. Not you.
You know,
That's a Otherland reference, by the way. Anyways,
missed it over my head.
no one would get it except for Bruce, maybe, and Katie.
You know, what's interesting about that is that there's like, that's what it's like getting into a relationship when it's not based on agreement, when you don't have an agreement, when it's not based on principle, rather, right? Like, what people think their agreements are is really just based in like a feeling, and really just based on like some strange idea that's not really communicated effectively. And then even when it is, it's like, it's still not best. And so I was talking with someone just this past week, and they were saying how in their marriage, they had an agreement of how their life was going to be structured and everything. But then when they had kids, then everything changed because they had different styles of raising kids. Right. And so I'm like, well, that's not an agreement.
Raise kids, I like to do this a lot. That's my style.
Right.
Like, what the fuck does that mean, style?
Right.
Like when I raise kids, I wear a tuxedo. Like, what style? What's your style?
That's my parenting style.
My parenting style is this way. I'm like, you're a man, you're a woman. Okay. What else is there?
Yeah.
Common sense.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Anybody who's like, well, I base things on agreement. If you're not on board with what we're doing, you didn't base it on an agreement.
Right.
Because what was the agreement based on?
Just some bullshit.
Like it's not, again, it's going back to the point we were talking about with reason and so forth. We looked up the definition, Mitch, on Google, and it goes back to the Latin for the word ratio and the word consider. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like
put together.
And then the first definition says, the first sub definition of the first definition is a good or obvious cause to do something. And that word obvious, right? Like we're always saying that's obvious. So it's like, you can't say, well, we're getting together, we're in a relationship, and the agreement is we're there to support each other's goals and desires and dreams. And I'm going to be in a career and they're going to be in a career. And then when we have kids, you know, I'm Jewish and she's Christian. So we're going to raise them, kind of go into synagogue one week and go to Christian church the other week, and just tell them about different things and expose them to that and let them choose what they want to. That's all a bunch of fucking bullshit. Like it's all total. There's a best way to do things, and then there's everything else.
Yeah.
And anybody who doesn't like that is a fucking loser. Like they just don't want to get with the program. They don't want to get in line. They don't want to fucking do what's best. Like it's not my program. It's common sense. It's reasoning. There can only be one set of principles that are best. That doesn't mean just because I said it's best, that makes it best. It's best because it's best. When you're self-honest and you have effective reasoning ability, you can see that it's best. So what I know is if you don't think it's best, it's because you don't know how to fucking reason effectively. And you can just say like, well, you just think that. Yeah, but did you do the work of going back and rebuilding your fucking vocabulary to make sure that you can actually reason effectively? Because in those first 7 years, did your parents do it? You know they didn't. You fucking watched Power Rangers and Wild and Crazy Kids and fucking, well, you probably don't know what that one is. That was when I was a kid, right? Nickelodeon shit, right? All this bullshit. You didn't spend the first 4 years of your life learning how to build electronic circuits.
Right.
I'll show you a quick video, right?
I didn't even know what electronic circuits were till I got to high school.
Right. Well,
Watch this real quick. I'm gonna turn it up. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it or not, but I'll try to put my headphones close. Okay. Can you see?
Hey, Seneca, you know how to turn this thing on? Can you show us? Amazing. How old are you? When will you be 3? Awesome.
Wow.
Right? She knows how to turn that thing on, turn it off. And it's in park,
Yeah.
so it's not going anywhere, right? It's in park and I got the brake on and all that stuff, right? But you see how she like turns it on. She's not scared. I love that part. I'll show you that part again. I love this part right here. Watch this little pose that she does. Let me try to get it to focus. Can you get it to focus?
Yeah.
Come on.
yeah.
Do you see that? She like does it. She goes
yeah.
like she also realizes I'm filming it, right? So she knows that I'm asking her to do something, and she's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just showing you an example. Like that's the kind of stuff my kids are learning. Now, would we let her go drive around on that thing? But obviously not. But she can drive around in her little. She has her own little side by side.
Mhm.
And dude, you go out there any time of the day, she's driving around in it. She's going to look at the chickens. She's driving over to Dirt Mountain. She's playing. She gets back in her car. She drives back to the house.
That's so cool.
Wow.
Why did I bring that up? It's like, well, I guess because one of you was talking about the point with like, it's just like, what is it that people think they're preparing their kids for by sticking them in school and just like, isn't it obvious to you guys how you put your kids in school or daycare and then suddenly you start having these problems where you're like, how do I get them to open up with me about X, Y, and Z? And then the experts are like, watch a Disney movie together and maybe because that's all they can relate to. They don't relate to you. They relate to the Disney. It's like, well, use something that they're interested in. It's like, but who made them interested in that? If they were around you all the time, they would relate to you automatically.
So you know what I remember
Yeah.
as a kid? I remember like being honest with my mom, like telling her what happened and then getting in trouble for it. You know, like getting punished for it. And I remember very clearly having the thought of like, why the fuck would I tell you anything?
See,
Why am I telling you shit?
I'm very specific with Max about that because like he'll come to me and be like, hey, Cam, can you come with me? And I'm like, sure. And he'll like show me something that he did that was like, you know, he got like soap all over the floor or something, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Do we need to clean that up right now? He's like, yeah. Or like maybe he broke something or whatever. I'm like, okay. All right. Well, why did it break? And he's like, oh, because I did this. Like, okay, so you understand though, that's a consequence that you did this. So would it be best to not do that or to do this or whatever? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm just like talking to him as if he was just showing me a flower that he was interested in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if he comes and shows me that he fucking destroyed the ATV or something, like he lit it on fire, right? And he's like, Cameron, I did this and I was playing with this. And I would be like, okay, well, why did that happen? Like, all right, okay, so that's not best, right? All right, cool. So, and I would explain to him. Now, you might think, well, what if he like did it on purpose? You know, I'm like, then why would he be coming to tell me about it?
Yeah.
First of all, he's not going to do that. He's not going to go spitefully do that. So that's not even a thought. But I'm saying he'll come to me. This has happened times where he's like broken something or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, it's like from his perspective, I don't care that it's broken. I don't care. I'm just more like, oh, cool. You're showing me now I can help solve this problem. Now I can be aware of it. Oh, I need to replace that. I need to do this. I mean, thank you for telling me. Because a parent who's got a broke mentality will be like, you know how much that costs, and this, like, we went into town yesterday, and we were getting some ice cream after dinner, and we were in this little tiny shop. You guys will see when you come here. And we had got some ice cream, and there was another table, and there's a woman sitting there, and she was like, I don't know what the kid's name. She was like, Travis, just yelling for him. She's like, Travis, come over here, get your ice cream. I'm gonna throw it away. Come over here and eat it. I'm gonna throw it away if you don't eat it. And I'm like, God damn. And then like the same thing came up with Seneca. She had left her ice cream on the table and she was walking around looking at toys. And I went over to her, I said, hey, Seneca, you left your ice cream on the table. Do you still want it? Do you want to go back and eat your ice cream? And she was like, no. And I was like, okay, can I have it? Or do you want me to throw it away or whatever? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, okay. But why was that person talking like that to their kid? Because that's how fucking someone did it to them.
Yeah.
And that, like, why do you need to like threaten them? Like, if you don't come eat your ice cream, I'm gonna throw it away. Just fucking, like, you probably don't even want them to eat the ice cream. But it's
Right.
like, I paid for it, so you better eat it or I'll throw it away. It's like, well, but you're threatening the thing that you don't want to. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. Like what I said to Seneca was like, do you want it? Because if not, it's gonna melt on the table. So I'll throw it away if you don't want it anymore. But I'm not like, you better eat it or I'm gonna throw it away.
Right.
It's more like, if you want it, you can eat it. If you don't, I'll throw it away. So you know when you come back why it's gone, because I don't want it to drip all over the table.
Yeah.
But if you want it, or if you want me to keep licking the sides for you for a minute, that's fine. Like, just tell me what we're doing here. Communication, rather than trying to use force and threat. You know what I mean? Yeah, what else can I say? To me, again, all this is obvious. It is all obvious. Mitch's dog is barking. Oh, okay, I know a good little topic we can talk about. Look this up, Drake. I'm gonna look it up too. Kune.
Kune.
Yeah, and then it's that word twice.
Okay. Oh, a pig.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at that.
Is that well? That's the first image that comes up.
All right, look at
Yeah.
those little guys. So for anybody who's watching, you can look these little guys up.
Why am I looking up pigs?
They're called kunis.
Goody goody.
Because when you come down in November, we will have several.
Why?
Katie wants kuni pigs.
Don't you guys
What
already
Katie
have?
wants, Katie gets.
Don't you guys already have wild boar that come on your property?
We haven't had any yet, but don't worry about that.
I'm just saying, if you really want some pig meat, there you go, right there.
Yeah, but these are like really cute. And Katie was like, they're really cute. And like, we can have them and raise them and all this stuff. And then, you know, we can eat them later. I'm like, cool. So we'll have little cute kuni pigs.
Nice.
They kept talking about it for the past few days. Katie's a really good salesperson. She just keeps talking about it, you know? And then by the time she's like, oh yeah, so I talked to this breeder and he's got two females and this one's got a male and like, you know, they're just like 2 hours away. And I'm like, okay, so when do you want me to go get them? There's no like, can we get these pigs? I'm just like, yeah, if you already decided you were getting them, then we're getting them.
Right.
It's not about like, oh, I don't want to say no. It's just like, why do I need to? Like, I know she's thought about all the points because she has.
Yeah.
She's like, we need to build this kind of pin and this and that. Because she knows whatever I need to do, she'll just show me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
We have like a relationship based on trust. That doesn't mean if she said something totally insane, I would just go along with it.
Right.
But I think we have enough land for a couple of pigs. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we live in a 1-bedroom apartment and she's like, we want to get 3 pigs. Like that would be insane.
That'd be hilarious.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be hilarious. Yes. So Mitch is back. So I was just biding time. Mitch, look up the word Kune.
Kune.
Yeah, and that word twice.
Yeah, you coon.
He said it, not me.
Kun
Kune.
in
Twice.
Japanese.
No, Kune, Kune.
Kune. Kune.
Oh,
Not look it up twice.
ooh, one of these New
So-
Zealand pigs.
We're getting a couple of or 3 of these.
Oh wow. You sure you don't want to just wrangle in one of those wild ones?
That's what Drake said. No. The wild ones will kill you. Like they will break your legs off. Like they will. They're not pets.
I've killed
Those-
a wild one before.
I'm currently
You've seen wild ones?
shopping. I'm currently in the market for 308 for that
Okay.
reason.
Okay.
All right, so
If you know a good 308, please leave it in the comments.
well, I'm looking at this Daniel Defense Delta. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah,
that's pretty
when we were at the gun shop, the guy was saying, he's like, yeah, it's like if you got that money, get the Daniel Defense. You get it one time, you got it for life. I'm like,
Yeah, but I want a bolt
think
action, not a AR style, right? Because I want that precision.
are you sure for the bores? Because what if there's multiple bores? You got to have good bolt action reload.
That's actually a good point. I hadn't considered that.
Because you don't have to.
I could just get
snipe
that.
the
I could
pig.
get that. I could get that AR-10.
Because you don't have to like get a headshot on the pig. It's okay if you just hit him a few times.
You just need to blast them. Yeah.
You just got to
It's not like
blast
you're
him.
shooting diff-
You
But
need-
at the same
the AR is
time,
pretty
I want to
accurate.
have it for maybe what I'll do is I'll get a 243 for a deer, and then I'll get a 308 or 7.62 or something, high caliber like AR-10 style or something. I don't know, man. Every time I go on Gun Broker, I start looking and I'm like, oh, it's like a candy shop. We're just like, so now I'm looking at gun safes.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
how big a
Yeah.
gun safe do I need?
So
I
is this pig imported from New Zealand or they have them local?
Well, they have them local, like bit breeders.
Yeah. Nice.
I
Wow.
just
What are you
like
gonna
to-
do with it?
Raise it, eat it.
Wow. I was thinking about that because now that we're getting ducks, I'm like, oh man, we name it, then it dies. I'm like still probably traumatized from like childhood, like having pets die or something. So I still got to work through that point. Then it's like,
I don't
hey,
have that issue. Oh god.
Cameron's like, I'm just like
Our kids don't have
cold-blooded.
that issue either.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like we had that goose and they loved it. They petted with it, and then like it was kind of like sick. So I just took it out and shot it and buried it. And like they were like, okay.
Mm.
I mean,
What do you mean it was sick? Like it had like,
it was definitely like, had problems. Like it wasn't walking properly, and it was
oh bummer.
clearly had some kind of like runny shit issues. And it was like we didn't want to infect all the other birds. And so we explained everything to the kids. We're not like people might be like, wow, your kids are like psychopaths. Like, no, like that's the kind thing to do. This thing was sick. It was
Mhm.
injured because we got it shipped to us. So it was kind of off from the beginning.
Oh,
And it could get the other animals sick and so forth because it had some bacteria in it or something like that. So
Mhm.
that's the kind thing to do. Like I
Yeah.
didn't enjoy doing it. Like, but I'm not like overly emotional about it. That's the thing. People act
Mhm.
like, oh, how would you kill this little creature that you named? I'm like, we don't give a fuck about the 20,000 kids that die every day of preventable causes. You don't care.
right.
Don't act like you
Right.
care.
Yeah. So so I was looking at this because one of our friends who has ducks, he's telling me how he's like when they wanted to butcher their ducks, he's like, yeah, I made the mistake of like shooting one of them with a gun, and he's like, it just blasted because they were like trying to get the meat and stuff.
I
So
would
he's
think
like, yeah,
you would just break its neck or cut its head off or something, I would guess.
right, yeah. So he's explaining how you like twist the neck. And he's like, it was really weird. Like the ducks, they just accepted the death. Like at the end, they just kind of laid down, like they knew what was going to happen. And so I'm just looking at within myself. I'm like, wow, I have to be stable within that because we're going to have ducks and eventually they're going to die. And then I'm like, oh, well, I got this machete. I'll start with that, you know?
Then you have a bunch of blood and then flopping around.
Oh,
There's that too.
good thing we have.
But the thing is too, for myself, I've already done these things before. So there has been a point.
You've
of
done this
talking
before?
Yeah, like I've shot deer, skinned deer.
Oh,
I've killed
yeah. My
rabbits
most I've
for
ever
food,
done is
stuff like
I
that.
shot a bird once. Like I did not grow up hunting. My mom was very like, you don't need to do anything with guns. And then I realized
Yeah.
I definitely need to know how to handle guns. And so I'm learning myself. So especially before we have kids, because then none of that subconscious stuff that I've never experienced like comes out on them, or if or I can just explain it real time. So
Yeah, exactly.
that'd be cool. Yeah.
So pigs, and you guys are getting the alpacas eventually, right?
Yeah, yeah. We got to have a plan because so we have the wedding
You-
coming up, and then we're gonna go
Yeah.
honeymoon, and then we have the Texas trip. And I'm not like, it's not a rush to get the alpacas. I think it'd be best to just wait till we get back. But
Probably. Yeah.
these ducks. I mean, we already have cats. We have the dogs. Like we need
The
someone to
ducks
come
will be
over.
fine, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're gonna need people anyways. The ducks will be fine. Like
yeah.
once they're out of the brooding stage, right? Then they won't need as much
Mm.
maintenance. And here's the thing too to realize, they're probably gonna get killed. I mean, maybe not. I don't know your area, but
Mhm.
animals are gonna die from time to time. You're gonna have animals die. They're gonna get hurt. Blah 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 blah. So just realize that's gonna happen too. So you don't need to be afraid of it. You know what I
Right.
mean? And just realize like that doesn't mean be irresponsible, obviously, but that's gonna be a part of it. Right. So
Yeah. Well, we don't have wild boars. We definitely have coyotes and foxes. Some hawks and stuff. Oh yeah, the hawks will just swoop down and grab them. This will be fun. It's like Planet Earth
I don't think
The
they'll get
show.
a duck.
in real life. They won't get a duck. You don't think?
I don't know. You ask Katie, she knows more about it, but I think you got to worry about the talks with chickens. But
Mm.
yeah, I don't
Look,
know.
chickens are smaller than I thought. Ducks were just. I thought chickens were actually bigger than ducks. No, they're probably roughly the same.
Yeah, maybe not. But also, and again, somebody might know. I don't know. I'm just speculating because I'd have to actually find out. Katie would probably actually know because she's done some research. But hawks are like programmed to get a chicken. Like it's an image that's within them. If that makes sense.
Oh,
So
got it.
I'm not saying that's not the case for ducks. I don't know, but
Oh, right. Because yeah, our friends who have these, well, they let their ducks just free range. They have their little spot in the back where they live at night, and then during the day they can just run around. The chickens, though, I believe they have a netting over it.
yeah. So when they're little, obviously you got to be careful because when they're small,
And-
like easily a hawk can get them.
You know what a mink is?
Mhm.
Yeah. Apparently those things are like brutal. They'll like grab the chicken and rip it in half.
Oh, wow. What's a mink?
It's kind of like a little. What's the word?
They look
Oh,
like,
like
like,
a
a
little
weasel. Okay, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
kind of like a mongoose, kind of like a gopher, but bigger.
Okay.
And
We have
they're
gophers, by the
apparently
way.
pretty nasty.
We have gophers and moles.
Oh,
Moles of what?
Yeah.
I've only seen a gopher one time though, when it was digging a little hole and I saw it pop down.
yeah, it's interesting because you'll have so like around here, one guy was telling us that they had this mink issue, and he would like come into the chicken coop and like or like just he was just killing the chickens. Then he's like, yeah, I was like contemplating bringing out the shotgun, but wanted to trap him. And then eventually the mink just moved on. But it's this interesting thing that we have to look at is like, as it's just like, oh, I just want to shoot it and get rid of the problem. But in reality, that mink is playing some role in the ecosystem. So I'm not saying don't shoot the mink or shoot the mink, but it just requires like a deeper level of, well, it's like looking at the bigger system. You know, because if you kill all the minks or if you kill all the gophers or whatever, then that's not food for something else. So it's really fascinating to look at it. And then
You can't just go exterminating all of them or something.
right. Or like, yeah. I mean, I'm so glad I have much higher vocabulary than I've ever had, and I know how to keep growing it because there's so much to learn about this. But
you
then it
feeling-
relates to everything else.
Are you
You
feeling
know.
more comfortable now being in that more rural type setting? Have you,
Oh, for
like,
sure.
feel like you're integrated?
Yeah.
Because I remember when we first moved to our place, it was like I felt very out of place.
Mhm.
But I think when it really all clicked was when we went on the trip to Florida and came back. So it's like we're coming back here
Mhm.
in a way, if that makes sense. It's like we're coming back to our place. And so after that, it was like I don't feel that. But it's like it takes time like to integrated as a part of you, and vice
Right.
versa, you know, and
Yeah.
upgrading your vocabulary, like doing my techno tutor, it accelerates all that stuff of like actually becoming a part of that environment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I notice it especially like when we'll have our meetup downtown. So we drive 45 minutes from here, and it's just like such a different pace of everything. 'Cause I mean, we're right in the heart of downtown. There's like all sorts of stuff. You never know what you're gonna see when you go down there. And so I'm like going from hanging out here on our property or with our neighbors and their animals and stuff, or just like whatever, to then that environment. It's just like such a contrast, but it's perfect because it's like a blend of everything I've ever been prepared for. So I've lived in cities all over the world, like in the heart of what we call like mouse utopia. And so I know, like, I enjoy that in a sense. It's probably some weird things. I like the energy. My ego loves it. And so I'm like aware of that. But I also enjoy the city, right? It's like there's a lot of novelty and you never know what you're going to see. Plus, that's where the opportunity is. So at any given moment, I could meet someone to then bring them into what we're doing or share self-perfected. Whereas out here, there's just less people. You can still talk to them. And so that blend, it's like I just see it as like the ultimate combination, at least for me and Jess, where we're out of the city, but we're still close enough to the city where we can have our finger on the pulse, basically. So
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, that's cool about Jefferson. You were saying how the people there are making it like a Renaissance town. Like that's so cool. Like before you even moved there, that was their plan, and then you got there. It's like really good.
It's all kind of like this one guy. Like you'll meet him when you come up here. Like you'll see, it's like he started the whole point. Like he's from Jefferson. He went to the Citadel in South Carolina. I think it's South Carolina, right? And he's a lawyer. Like it's kind of like he's from here. He's proud of being from here, and he wants it to. And you'll see, he's a person who's like, he's very friendly, but he gets stuff done, and it's like he knows how to network. I remember him telling me this story about, well, I won't go into all the details of it, but like he wanted to get like this university, major university, to have a kind of satellite campus of the main university here in this town, in this building. And he told me this whole story about how he took one of the high up people out on this like boat into like this really pretty lake that we're going to go visit when you guys come. And there was all these lotuses, and like they were going through the boat, and like it was this whole experience, right? And it was after that point that they ended up making the decision, right? And so it was cool because he was kind of teaching me a little bit about how he sells.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and he said, I've done that many times where he would just take people out into certain environments and so forth, right? So we were talking, and he was saying how, because I was just telling more about like everybody coming down, like I'm probably gonna have 30 or 40 people or more here, right? And he was like, okay, well, we could do like a walking tour of the city rather than like, you can do like the golf carts and the bus and all that. And he's like, but I find the walking ones much more interesting. Take your time. I'm like, dude, our people would love that.
Yeah, I'm like,
I told him the story about, I told him about when we were in Orlando and we did that whole thing. We went downstairs and walked around. Like I said, our people would love that. Like, we're not in a hurry. We don't really care about what we're seeing, but we're just talking and it's interesting, and it'll be great. So, but you guys will get it. And I told him, I was like, I have some distributors I really want you to meet, because I want you to see like who we're working with. You know what I mean? So that'll be really cool. But yeah, you'll see like there's something specific about this particular town. And it just shows like when you make decisions based on not a desire to be comfortable, but what is actually best, what would push you and what would allow you to do more, other things tend to open up too. They really do. And you guys have both seen, right? When you make the hard decision, other things come to you through that decision. And like I said, we came here for the property itself. And then we found out about the town. And then we found about different people and so forth.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm sure like when you just brought up the way that he sells and like how he'll take people to different places, like I'm sure for him that's like actually enjoyable. Like, oh, where am I going to take this person? You know, like, oh, okay, you know what? There's that one restaurant, or there's this like great lake, or whatever it is. Like I can see that being really enjoyable. Like I've done
But
that.
when you read the Everything Store,
Yeah.
right? Like, and they would invite people to their house, or they would go to dinner, or this, or like, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what they do. You see what I
Want to
mean?
know what's funny? I remember that book Hard Drive, the one about Bill Gates, how he would have people come to town and then he'd take them in his Porsche through the desert and like drive at 100 miles an hour. That's so funny. It's like a little bit different, but it's still giving the person that experience. I think Bill was doing it to
It's
just
an emotional
the shit out of
experience.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So there's like it's depending on the person's style or whatever style. Their way of looking at it and approaching it. And again, it's like what they find fun. So it's kind of like bringing that person into your world, you know? And yeah, it's pretty cool because I'm connecting with a lot of people and I'm seeing how they kind of do things. And like also with this guy, it's not that that's the only thing he does. He's like, because he was telling me like, he's like, I'm at the stage of my life where I want to like do long-term big picture stuff now. And he's like, and I was like, he said, and I was like, well, you have a lot more experience now, so that makes sense. And he's like, yes, I also have the network. He's like, that took time. He said, I didn't have that when I was young, but I built that. Right. So he's a networker. He said his favorite kind of party to go to is one where he doesn't know anybody. Right.
That's cool.
Mm.
Which is most people's least favorite kind of party.
Right.
But he's like, I just like talking to people and get to know them, asking questions and everything. Cause he's always looking at the potential of like, how can I do something with you? So we talked for like a few hours at his office the other day, and it was cool because like I was challenging him on some points. Like he was talking about religion, and I was explaining to him why I'm not religious and why I live from principles. What I see are the problems, you know. And I told him, I was like, look, I'm just going to tell you, like, some people, I find that people either really like me or they really don't like me, because I'm just going to tell the truth. I don't compromise. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, this person needs to think I'm a Christian, so I'm going to go to church with them and pretend or some shit. Like, I might go to church with you, but I'm going to tell you up front, I'm not Christian. Like, I'm not uncomfortable going there. I'm not going to fucking sing the hymns. I'm not going to fucking, you know what I mean? like, but I'll go with you if you're going to, I mean, maybe not. Like, otherwise I'm like, I don't want to go to your church. Like, let's do something else.
Yeah.
So he realizes, okay, that's not a way he's going to like get my support, is by getting me to go to his church or something. You know, he's clear on like where I stand. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like being clear within yourself and stable within what's your purpose. My goal is to bring everybody else into what we're doing, not the other way around. Like, people were trying to recruit me into some group thing that's like some kind of elite thing, and I'm like, nah. Like, cool. It's cool that people see that I'm a fit for that kind of stuff, but here's all the ways in which I'm going to fucking just challenge people. So what's the point? Why don't I just find out the ones who are teachable and bring them into what we're doing?
Mm.
You see what I mean? I don't need to be a part of your group. You be a part of my group.
Yeah.
You see? Because at the end of the day, there's only a certain amount of people in that group, but they still have people who aren't in their group. Right? So what do I stand for? So I'm only going to be a part of groups that stand for the things I stand for, clearly. And everybody else can just realize, like, they have to do what we're doing. They have to stand up and support actual real equality, actually real special. There's no middle ground. Like, I'm not going to go into politics by compromising. I'm
Right.
going to go into politics by doing what's best. And if that takes more time, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you have the network and you have the resources, that's all you really need. That's how everybody else gets there. They have networks and they have resources. The problem is, where do you get the resources and who is your network? You know what I mean? If your network and your resources are based and built from principles, then you don't have to do the compromising shit.
Yeah.
Right. So Thursday, I'm going to a barbecue for a congressman
That's pretty cool.
because of that network that we built. It is cool. Right. And there's going to be like some guest speaker, Laura Logan. I actually didn't look her up. Laura Logan. I'm just looking her up on me. Oh, she's South African. I didn't realize that.
Oh, that's cool.
She's
Ask her if she knows Bernard.
she might. Oh, wait. Okay, I thought I recognized her, but it's because she really looks a lot like another actress. Who's that actress? Naomi Watts. She looks a lot like, from my perspective, looks a lot like Naomi Watts. But she's on Fox Nation. So she's on Fox. But she'll be like the guest speaker at the at the barbecue.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fun as we start to roll out all the political stuff. Like it's already here, just through who you're meeting, who I'm meeting, building the network.
And what I
Yeah.
find is the more I'm bold and certain and just talk about the things I want to talk about, it doesn't mean you just immediately like try to steamroll people. But it's like you listen, you talk, and then you find the points where you can push back and then open things up. And then the next time I talk to them, I'm even more to the point where it's like, now we're just talking about what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like if what you're asking me to do fits in with what I'm doing, then cool. If not, nah. It's like he
Yeah.
kept talking to me about, well, how can we get, what you're doing and involved with this major university? And I'm like, look, a major university would have to beg me to work with them. That's not what I'm trying to do. And I would much rather connect them with a distributor who wants to take that responsibility. But I'm not interested in working in the university. And then I said to him, I was like, look, because he's working with the university here. And I was like, and it's cool what he's doing. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's actually pretty cool. He's working with micro certification. So it's not like they're trying to get like professors doing lectures and shit like that. It's just micro certification for like programming and things like that. So it's actually fits in very well with what we do. But I was like, are you aware of all this diversity, equity, inclusion shit? And I was like, if you invite that into your life, like you're inviting in trouble. So he's like, yeah, I understand all that. Right. So my point is like, when I say like, I don't have an interest in working with the university, I'm not trying to fucking get into all that. Like, you see what I mean? I'd rather us just move and do what we're doing. We're here to support individuals, families. We're not trying to, and he's like, well, come with me on this meeting. I've got this guy and he can, he works with some biomedical whatever. And he works with the Pentagon. And I told him a little bit about what you're doing. And the guy was like, oh, there's definitely military application. And he's like, this guy could connect you with like multi-million-dollar government contracts. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested in it. That's not what I'm here to do. Plus, what does that come with?
Death.
Huh?
Death.
Well,
Consequences.
yeah,
death.
obviously.
Yeah.
But also it's like, who do you have to work with? Who do you have to what do you have? Like, I'm not trying to just be the guy who creates a company and then gets all these contracts and then sells the company because it's got a big valuation. Fuck
Right.
that. That's not
Right.
the point. That's what everybody else is trying to do. They don't actually care about what they're doing.
Yeah.
They just have some little niche and then they're trying to like get it built up so that they can then they can get rich. And that's it.
And that's what's so awesome about what we're doing is it's real. It's based in principle.
But
Like,
it puts
that's
the
not-
responsibility on you guys, like each of the distributors, the people to really stand up, the people who use TechnoTutor to actually do it. This isn't about just exploiting the system for us all to have a nice life. That's not the point. So it's actually cool because when you learn to say no to things, people are even more like, oh, well, okay, but can you come out to this? Can you come hang out more? It's like, and I'm just saying, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. So I was very clear with them. I'm like, I'll go with you on these meetings. If you're just asking me to go because I have a really nice personality that'll help you close this person on coming to the town, because I'll help you with that because I know you're going to help me with X, Y, and Z here. Because when I told this guy, and the only reason I'm being vague about who it is because we're on the podcast, right? But like when I told him, I was like, just so you're clear, because this is like, I've met with him many times now, and now it's like at a point where we're just me and him talking for a while, right? And I was like, I want to go into politics, right? And I didn't say yet how far, I just kind of introduced the point. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, I can help you with that. Right. So like, I know what I'm here to do. And as much as it's like working together with people, because I know people would want to come to this town because there's people like me that live here. Because people, you think, go to a 2,000 person town in Texas, why the fuck would somebody who's like an entrepreneur want to come live here?
Right.
Right. But then I started telling them about you, Mitch. And I was like, but look, there's these young people, early to mid to late 20s, who want to get homesteads, estates, want to have some kind of self-sufficiency, access to local farms, things like that. These people are popping up, right? And he was like, yeah. So he's like kind of looking at what are the people that we want to attract here, is what I mean. So I know I can help him with that point, because that's what I want. I want those kind of cool people too.
Yeah.
Because then who can I influence?
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's perfect, because everything we're doing is actually best, because they are going to have kids. Those would be the people to get to know and to influence, just like you're doing, Mitch. All those people that you're meeting and you're like, you got to get Technotutor, because then they'll raise their kids effectively and they have the time and the ability to do it. Because they're not interested in put their kids in school and all that shit. Like they're like, no, we want to do the thing. We don't do things ourselves. That's what you got to look for. People who want to take some responsibility, and even the people who don't and still put their kids in school, they could still benefit from Technotutor. And at least you have that kid has that tool to where they can start to question things, and they're not totally reliant on their school education. They've also got their Technotutor.
Yeah.
So it works regardless. But who do you want to look for as the next wave of leaders is the point.
Right.
That's the point. So
Cool.
what else? I mean, we
think
talked
that's
about
good.
Kuni Kunis, we talked about the alpacas, we talked about politics.
The ducks and the machetes. Let's see. Yeah, one other cool point was so Seth has been hanging out here over the weekend, and Pedro usually comes by too, but he's out in Florida right now. Making
Oh
shit
yeah,
happen.
Patrick Bet David, yeah.
Yeah, man. He's like,
Nice.
dude, I have so many leads. He's like, they told me about 4 more events I have to go to. And it's like, now Pedro really sees the point of when you have your Technotutor business as a distributor, you can literally hop from event to event to event. And then at home, you just create events and you find 5 people there that really get it. They buy Technotutor. You just made a shitload of money and you expanded your network. And you do that over a year, year and a half, 2 years. That's
It's
power
cool because
right
he's
there.
going, he's learning some things, he's not getting sucked in, and he's building his business.
Yes. And then
So it's really cool.
he plays the part perfectly. I mean, he looks like a young, like,
He looks like a fucking
billionaire
model, like
from
an
some
Abercrombie
movies.
model. Do you guys remember Abercrombie? I don't know if they still
Yeah.
have that.
yeah.
He would
And,
be like an
um,
Abercrombie model, right? When I was growing up, that would be.
And so he's out there doing that. And now Seth over the weekend, Seth's just been taking more and more responsibility. It's amazing. He's like doing all these presentations. He's like, man, I love the proof book. Like, I love this thing. I'm like, awesome.
Good.
And so he's looking at like getting a house, just all the next points. It's awesome. And yesterday on that self leaders call, he's like, wow. He's like, I don't know how I didn't see it before. Doesn't really matter. I see it now. He's like, I know I have to get into politics. Like, I get it. Like that if I'm serious about wanting to change the world, which I am, it's that next point of responsibility.
Okay,
Like-
so you see these events work.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about why do we go to these major events before we went? And then you guys went, you got your people to go, and then you see the shifts that occur.
Yeah.
So you've been saying all the stuff you've been saying, now it
Yeah.
suddenly starts to activate.
Exactly. And
So
yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah. And then now knowing we have those 2 more events this year, and then the next gin event too, so the wedding.
When is
the,
that? January, right? End of January. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's just so awesome because it's like all these next waves of everything. And then Eric as well, being local too, man, he's great. He's bringing more people to the meetup than anyone else has. So
That's good. So that'll grow and grow.
yeah, because that's really our intention, is to make Minneapolis a blueprint city in Minnesota, like a blueprint state of what's possible in terms of how you build community, how you support individuals, how you build the network, and then over time, then we build the right system so that everyone can have their needs met, and we're all equals, and we all play our own point. But that's what we're building here, and we already have the network. We have enough of the people, but it has to keep accumulating. But we have enough of, kind of like earlier we were talking about that database. Like, you got to get the right stuff into the kid, and then the AI like learns from it. Well, we have enough of the core people here, and we all have Technotutor, and we all have principles. So now it's just 1 + 1 + 1 + 1,
See,
and
and that's
again,
the reasoning,
like-
isn't it? Just like you were talking about
right?
earlier.
Yeah. And down the road, like you said as well, Cameron, like when everyone gets jealous 5-10 years from now, 1 year from now, this is how you did it, right?
Yeah.
This is what I did on the weekends. I hung out with the distributors. I didn't choose to go to the bar. I didn't choose to go whatever. And it's like I took on more responsibility. And I'm just not making excuses, but that's how you do it. And you use your
But it's
technical.
like it can be way more fun. There's like the initial part in the beginning where you kind of have to walk through all your insecurities, like your low self-esteem points. You're using your techno tutor. You're going out there. You're getting a lot of rejection. It's like, but there's a certain once you get through that, you get to a point where, oh, I could just be myself now. I know everything. Like any conversation I'm in, I can talk competently about what we're doing.
Yeah.
At all different levels. I could sit with a congressman and I could talk to them about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And I can
are they
talk
going to
the
listen
neighbor
to me?
farmer.
Right. Like, are they going to do anything at this point based on what I'm saying? Maybe not. I don't know. But I don't feel inferior. Like, oh, I just have to go along with what they're saying. No, like I'm going to listen and I'm going to ask questions just like you did when you talked to that congressman. Then you started interjecting points. Right.
Yep.
And then you bring it to the points you want to talk about. And what's really cool is suddenly you're dominating the conversation and they're like, that guy's cool. I remember that guy. Like that guy fucking is serious about something.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Versus you're just the guy who's like, oh, Mr. Congressman, hi, oh, you're so amazing. Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, maybe you have to walk through some of that stuff. But we're here to be leaders, not followers, not worshipers or any of that shit. So we have to act as that. Walk through the points for yourself of it's like you weren't programmed effectively when you were a kid. So it's gonna be really difficult in the beginning because you're having to redo all that. Go listen to Bernard's audios, the 7-year journey to life. It's easy to try to overly spiritualize what Bernard is saying. Make it practical. Like he's talking about the 7-year journey to life, meaning living and standing up in the fucking world and being someone who actually makes a difference. He's not talking about the journey to life of fucking spirituality. You know what I mean? Like when he's talking about reprogramming yourself, he's talking about in order to fucking stand up in the system. That's he's not talking about anything else. He's talking about if you were alive here as a human being with all the fucking problems, would you stand up or not? And how do you do that? You have to reprogram yourself and you have to walk a process to do that. It's not some fucking spiritual bullshit where it's like about feeling good all the time and some bullshit. So if you're not increasingly building your network, standing up, becoming better to where you could get to the point where you sit down with a congressman and tell them about equal life, destiny process, techno tutor, changing the system. If you can't do that, you're not ever going to make a difference.
Right.
Because if you can't sit down with a congressman, the person who can make the fucking laws, how are you going to ever fucking influence the system? And then obviously you have to realize you get to a point where you just become the congressman or the president or whatever the case may be. And influence the ones. I mean, think about it. We can already get the ones who are already congressmen on our side too.
Right.
So like when we're in there, we don't have every seat, but even the incumbent ones, they're like listening to us. But that takes time to develop that ability and that skill. It's not, I wasn't born with it. I wasn't trained to do it when I was a kid. I've had to develop it, and each person has to develop that within themselves. And it's cool because this is the best way to walk your process. If you see value from listening to Destiny and Bernard, and you're like, yeah, I want to walk this process, then this is the best way to do that because it gives you something measurable. And whether you realize it or not, it's actually the point of the process. So some may not realize that because they like came into this through Destiny and so forth. They're not realizing what we're doing is the process. It is.
Yeah. And you can just like, in terms of then reasoning it out, it's like the easiest way when you're a distributor is just go do 30 presentations. Like you will learn so much, even if literally everyone says no, which there's no way they're gonna, but like, just go do the thing 30 times, face your fears, go through it. Cause every time it gets a little bit easier. And then at some point you're like, oh shit, I can do this. Cool. And then bam, then you're at your next level of responsibility. Now it's like, okay, I got to go meet with 30 politicians. Cool. And I got to go meet with 30 people and explain the higher levels of distributorship. So it's like, I know what I got to do. And even after 4 of them, I'm like, okay, I learned so much from that. And then you just keep doing that and building, helping other people do the same.
And in order to do that, you have to develop emotional stability because you can't do that if you're like constantly wavering. So it supports you to have something measurable to let go of making decisions emotionally to where you become more stable. That's what's going to attract the partner that you want. That's what's going to give you stability with income. That's what's going to give you all the things that you want that you don't have right now. So it's an actual process to go through to change all the things that are currently keeping you in the situation that you're in, which you're not happy with. It's that simple. All right, you guys want to leave it there for today?
Sounds good.
Anything else?
I think that's solid.
Go do all the things that we always say to do, and go on the hangout and watch all the other podcasts and like it,
Sounds good.
subscribe it, and share it.
Awesome. Peace.
See ya.